It's the year 2039. The great alien war of the early 2000s is long over. In many ways, the Earth has recovered despite the scars of war that remain. Now, a new threat emerges, not from space, but rather an ancient horror from the depths. This is Terror from the Deep, the oft-critiqued sequel to the classic XCOM, otherwise known as UFO. After the surprise hit that was UFO, Microprose wanted a speedy release of a sequel to follow it up. However, the original creators, the Gollop brothers, were busy with the game Apocalypse, which would later release in 1997. In the interim, the go-ahead was given for a second internal team at Microprose to produce a less ambitious sequel that would become Terror from the Deep. In the same vein as a lot of sequel games in the late 90s, Terror from the Deep was a bit more like an expansion pack than a truly new game. Same engine, same basic gameplay loop, even a lot of the same core mechanics were retained from the previous game. I personally don't see it as terribly different from something like Doom 2 in this respect. However, unlike Doom 2, the reception at this time was definitely not positive, with the similarities to its predecessor being just one of many complaints. Though in my opinion, I think it's a pretty minor one compared to some of the others, which color the game's reputation much more among contemporary reviewers. For me personally, something about Terror from the Deep was always really attractive. The variety of otherworldly deep-sea environments and strange weathered and archaic-looking alien ships, giving the game a sort of foreboding aesthetic, I've not really seen much elsewhere. I definitely describe it as almost Lovecraft-light in its overall theming. Even the intense difficulty was something I found perversely appealing, which I think a lot of people share when faced with some of these notoriously difficult games. There's something about staring down an overwhelming threat that just motivates you more than any reasonable challenge does. What sets Terror from the Deep apart from UFO then? Not really much in all honesty. Terror from the Deep is more or less just like a Mac Pack, an expansion of UFO, a DLC add-on if it came out today. Much of what makes Terror from the Deep good is simply the fact that it's literally the same game as UFO at its core, and UFO is already one of the greatest games of all time, so it's got a lot of benefit from that. A lot of the differences are pretty superficial. As Terror from the Deep was produced on an extremely short time frame, there simply wasn't the time to make anything too extensive. Nevertheless, the tile sets, the lighting, the sprite work are all different, as are a lot of the UI designs, though retaining the same sort of layout and function as UFO. Perhaps some of you might not like the general art style and how it diverged quite a bit from the more sleek and retro sci-fi B-movie aesthetic of UFO, and especially a lot of people seem to dislike the puke color palette I've heard it described as. Despite this potential criticism, these are a massive improvement in my opinion. While I really enjoy the sleeker designs of UFO, especially the alien tech with its kind of bright stainless steel kind of design, the overall improvement to map sprites and tiles, as well as the sheer variety of locations in Terror from the Deep, makes it a much more diverse experience when it comes to engaging with the alien menace on the battle maps, especially considering how much time you'll be spending there. Seeing an ancient ruined temple, an underwater volcano, or fighting through a shipwreck is really cool. It makes me wish there was a greater focus on 3D movement in the underwater space. Perhaps it would break the AI, but it would allow you to really appreciate the full scope of the new environments. On some missions, particularly cruise ships, the maze-like layout can be utter hell, but for most of the normal missions, I find the anxiety created by the sheer number of hiding spots around the map to be extremely engaging. In UFO, you very quickly get into a groove of sorts, where you can clear out every map without really planning beyond knowing what aliens you're going to be needing to encounter. But in Terror from the Deep, every battle is not only far larger, but the aliens are far more mobile as well, and seem to take better tactical positions, at least it feels that way, in order to ambush you. Perhaps it's a quirk of the map design or even some AI improvements, but I find the overall tactical operations of the aliens to be much more dynamic than those of UFO, meaning you can never really take any battle too lightly. As a guerrilla battle against some aquatoids can still see a high-level squad decimated. Naturally, you will need to take advantage of these new environments as well, setting up your own hitman squads to covertly scour the seabed, or even my personal preferred strategy, creating a singular hardpoint of explosive armed troopers, completely covered by high-level snipers, and just going big game hunting on the aliens that inevitably show their poor little heads. Frankly, the environments just look beautiful as well, even with the sickly poop yellow-green color palette, it not only makes the brighter colors pop when they're used, but in general it suits to create a feeling of fear and disgust towards the alien threat, which in my opinion is really absent from the first game. In UFO, the alien menace has an air of unknowability. They're an entirely external, conquering army who wants to terraform Earth as their own planet dies. At least that's what I always kind of assumed. In contrast, Terror from the Deep, the aliens have been on Earth longer than humans have, slumbering in the darkest depths until the time of destiny approaches. This planet is theirs, and it's humans who are the loathsome creatures who have managed to populate the surface during the millions of years of slumber. The sea is a deadly and unnerving place even in real life, so to leverage that sickening feeling is to create a true feeling of terror, which I think Terror from the Deep achieves perfectly, if mostly by accident, though maybe saying by accident is a little bit unfair to the game. As for the alien designs, I'm pretty mixed about them. While I do think a lot of them are excellent, especially the likes of the lobstermen or the giant jellyfish-like hallucinoids, I do wish they were a bit more varied, with the sheer variety possible when it comes to the hideous alien fishmen that you could have. I'm a bit disappointed that most of the enemies don't lean into this all that much. The absolute peak for me is the Tentaculat, which manages to hit us that sweet spot of being both very disgusting and terrifying. For my next biggest praise of the game, I can't miss mentioning the soundtrack. The original score of Terror from the Deep is one of the best I've heard in any game, retro or modern. It's haunting, dreadful, unnerving, but somewhat soothing at times as well. It hits that balance of creating an uneasy feeling without making the player feel too stressed or overwhelmed. In this way, it reminds me of the scores for many of the Alfred Hitchcock films, where there is an omnipresent tension to them. But it's never overwhelming, and it really serves to emphasize the scary moments far more than some overbearing, booming theme might. To me, it feels like a mix between the film Abyss and Psycho, with calm atmospheric themes giving way to short bursts of heightened tension, fear, and apprehension before cooling off again. It's utterly perfect for the gameplay of Terror from the Deep. And this is all without mentioning the battle sound effects, from the sound of your vibroblade cracking open in a lobsterman like you're getting ready for dinner, or the sickly, squishy sound of the Tentaculat flying out of the darkness. Now to focus on the other glaring change from UFO, that being the overall major increase in difficulty. I've heard people often say that beginner mode in Terror from the Deep is about equivalent to Superhuman in UFO, and honestly I'd have to at least partially agree. Terror from the Deep is a crushingly brutal experience to play. The map layouts, combined with the variety of new mission types, as well as the all-around buffs and nerfs to both the aliens as well as the weaponry available to XCOM, makes what was once a calculating campaign in UFO into a treacherous struggle for survival, even with optimal play in Terror from the Deep. This dramatic shift in difficulty was actually due to a bug in the initial release of UFO, that being where the difficulty would reset back to beginner every single time you start a new game. So you had people playing on Superhuman complaining about how pathetic the aliens were because they're actually on beginner mode. Well, you can't say Microprose didn't listen, because they tweaked nearly everything to create an experience that, while still fair in my opinion, is often harrowing to actually play through. This is one of the many, happy accidents in the development of Terror from the Deep as far as I'm concerned. Sometimes mistakes turn into miracles because of these changes. While being completely diabolical, I'm looking at you again, the flying chrysalids, also just sort of work. Whether by intent or accident, the huge increase in difficulty changed the game from a methodical war where you outsmart and overcome an initially superior alien foe to one where your survival is always on the line And when you finally struggle through the entire 2-stage colony assault, with most of your team killed or wounded, you can feel that sense of primal victory as you smash the final alien cowering in a closet. Terror from the Deep is fair but horribly unbalanced, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Few other games really come close to emulating that feeling of overcoming impossible odds through sheer willpower and the indomitable human spirit. This isn't a conventional war anymore. There's no maneuver, this is a war of attrition. The feeling is present both in the world map as well as the battle space. You will always be outnumbered. Every map is massive and often has multiple levels. Enemies are agile and tough, and the multi-stage missions mean that you need to approach every situation with the mindset of a Soviet commander from World War II. I often find myself asking questions like, how can I grind down a superior mobile enemy? And the answer more often than not is obscene amounts of artillery and explosive, just overwhelming firepower. In UFO, rocket launcher recon is a bit of a meme, but in Terror from the Deep, it's basically standard operating procedure. Don't even get me started on terror missions. Civilians might as well just be scenery considering how little thought I give them in Terror. When I'm leveling an entire beachfront resort. You don't understand, officer. I had to obliterate that house with all the civilians inside. There was an alien in the backyard using it for cover. On the world map as well, you are completely outmatched. Alien colonies pop up constantly and are incredibly tough to take down. You will find yourself eventually in a world that seems more alien than human after a certain point, but that's the appeal. This is not a conquest, but an extinction event. This is further emphasized by the final showdown where you face an awakening elder god of the deep in a suicide mission deep in the depths of the ocean. There are no tricks in Terror from the Deep, and you can't afford to be too careless as you're never out of danger. Terror from the Deep is the type of game where after a 3-hour singular terror mission, a 2-stage terror mission I should say, you need to just go lay down and take a nap afterwards. That's the type of energy we're talking about here. But you know what? That's fun as hell. So many modern games just hold your hand and walk you through the whole thing before they give you a kiss on the head goodnight. It's refreshing to go back and play something that beats the shit out of you without a second thought. Now to move on to the more negative aspect of Terror from the Deep in my opinion. First off, the dark side of this insane difficulty level I just talked about. The game is generally difficult overall for sure, but where this goes from being fun to being just ugly is in some of the terror missions. In this game there are many missions that are now 2 stages, meaning once you finish the first stage, you have to immediately move on to the second with no breaks in between. This is where the real grind sets in. While it is an intense and rewarding experience to have to plan for such a long battle and manage the inevitable attrition, it also becomes more and more tedious as the game goes on, and you are yet again grinding through 4 levels across a 2-stage alien colony assault. I wasn't joking when I said this is a take a nap after the battle type game. It can really start to wear on you until the real enemy becomes your own patience to see the game through to victory, rather than just quit your campaign. The worst culprit are the cruise ship missions, which not only have you fight through 2 stages, but you have to clear out almost every single cabin and corner of the entire ship to catch that last alien who inevitably just one-shots your soldier and runs away again as soon as you find him. Adding to these frustrations, I should also mention the tech system. It's hard to say if this is a bug, but it's incredibly easy to soft-lock yourself by not researching the right things at the right time. Having a more open-ended tech tree is cool, but the fact that missing something like failing to capture a specific alien before they never show up again can permanently end your game is frustrating. Thankfully, this improved with the modern game, especially playing on Open XCOM. The last glaring flaw that comes to mind is how little the underwater setting is used. While it looks beautiful, it's a shame that the verticality of the maps is never really taken advantage of in a unique way. Some mods, such as the World of Terrifying Silence, improve this, but it's still a shame that we never got a proper 3D battle space in the crushing deep darkness. My dream would have been to split the oceanic battles into at least 2 types, coastal battles and deep sea battles. Coastal battles playing out more or less the same as vanilla, but maybe with some alternate gear to enable swimming at an earlier age, And then the deep sea battles operating almost as submarine duels, where vision is so low you need to rely on your mapping tech or sonar to seek out the enemy rather than visually locating them. If you stuck with me this long and want to dip your toes into the murky depths of this game, I can give you some tips to hopefully turn your overall gameplay experience from Shadow over Innsmouth to Sega bass fishing. First of all, take all those jet harpoons you start with and throw them in the trash. Replace them all with gas cannons immediately as your standard infantry armament. Gas cannons are great because they're effective both on land and in the water. However, if you really want to, you can also use the hydrojet launchers underwater. Just remember, they work only underwater. They don't work on land, so remember to switch them out every time you have a land mission. Just to make it easier, though, you can always just give everyone gas cannons because, they work everywhere. Every single XCOM soldier who can manage to carry a gas cannon basically should be doing so. And anyone who can't should be a scout holding a magnapack to blast massive holes in difficult terrain, as well as alien ships. Recovery is absolutely a secondary concern early on. Once you have gauze weapons researched, you can give them to your weak scouts so they can be somewhat effective, but honestly, gas cannons should be your primary armament as much as possible until you research sonic cannons and sonic pulsars to replace them with. My primary strategy in most battles is almost the opposite of how I normally play UFO. Rather than spreading out in strike teams across the map and cornering your enemy into kill zones, just try to open up the area as much as possible and bring the enemy into your own kill box, where you can take your top marksmen and snipe them until their numbers are sufficiently thinned out so as to make an assault viable. I described this as playing as a big game hunter, and I meant it. You aren't going to be chasing down an elephant through the forest. You're going to open up a clearing and wait for him to come to you, else slowly marching forward, clearing space out ahead, and shooting your prey between the eyes when you spot him. I also wouldn't hesitate to make use of suicide bombers if necessary. A dead rookie with a magnapack can still blow a hole in tough terrain as well as a live one can. This is a war of extermination after all. When it comes to the most difficult and tedious missions, I agree with and follow the advice of a lot of veteran XCOM players, which is to just take the mission and immediately abort. For your own sanity at least, you are better off aborting pretty much every cruise ship mission after accepting it. Not accepting the mission gives too large of a penalty, but the cost of actually fighting the battle can be so massive as to not even be worth it. You are better off honestly just taking the smaller reputation penalty for aborting upon arrival. Lastly, be sure to go all out on your first terror mission that involves deep ones. You need to capture one alive to progress your key technologies, so it might even be worth taking massive risks to capture one, even if you need to abandon the mission immediately after just to ensure success. If you keep these things in mind as you play, and treat it again as if you are a commander on the Eastern Front of World War II, I think you can succeed. I still stand by my statement that this game is ultimately fair, aside from the buggy tech tree in the original version. The aliens are superior to you in terms of mobility and firepower, but you have time on your side. Both UFO and Terror from the Deep have an asymmetric difficulty curve, where the game is at its most difficult pretty early on. However, once you get your factories pumping out material and keeping up that flow of new rookies incoming, you are grinding those aliens slowly but steadily into the dirt until you are standing over the Führer bunker with Cthulhu cowering inside. It's going to be a long, difficult, and costly war, but it's one you can still win. Terror is one of the biggest missed opportunities in the history of gaming, and one of the most flawed gems. But it's also an experience I think anyone who has played UFO would find engaging. Perhaps with Open XCOM and more mods in the future, we could see this uncut gem shine a bit brighter. But honestly, even in its current state, I can't help but have a soft spot for Terror from the Deep. Its gloomy atmosphere and genuinely panic-inducing moments. So next time you're at a beach resort and a stray harpoon grazes your ear, or your girlfriend suddenly explodes from being hit by a grenade, say a little thanks to XCOM for keeping the seas safe for us all. And remember guys, if you like the kind of content I make here, remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. But either way guys, I'll see you again next time. So goodbye everyone.